have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
So yeah, that was weird last night in the fourth quarter of that Timberwolves lot. 20 years of losing in Toronto. 20 years. And we will get into the Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards awkwardness here. First, though, let's talk about great burgers, actually, Judd.
Oh, yeah.
Not to steal your copy, but that Parlor Burger is. Ooh.
Absolutely fantastic. And speaking of, if you're going to be going to a Wolves game in the North Loop, not far away is Parlor Bar, which is what Phil is talking about. Yes, the burgers are great. May I give you another suggestion? Because I tried this once, too, and it was fantastic. Sneaky, underrated, probably, the fried chicken sandwich.
Oh, I love a fried chicken
sandwich. It was to die for. It was fantastic. And of course, as Phil said, there is the famous Parlor Burger, which is, you cannot beat that. Craft cocktail menu as well, which is great. The kitchen at Parlor North Loop open until midnight on Friday and Saturday, so check them out, parlorbar.com. That's parlorbar.com. And again, if you're going to a Wolves game, trying to make plans beforehand, no better place to stop than Parlor Bar to get a bite to eat.
Shout out to KS Drywall also for powering Flagrant Howls this season, providing full drywall and plaster repair. Maybe you punched a hole through your drywall last night with about 5 minutes to go in that game. Popcorn ceiling, texture removal, interior painting services. They will do anything from a new construction to small emergency repairs. They've got you covered at KS Drywall. No job is too big or too small. Quality craftsmanship, quality communication throughout the duration of your project. You're going to like your experience with KS Drywall. KSDrywall.com to schedule a free estimate. So this is a Feedback Friday here, and so we'll start with Matthew Paseka, who, like all of us, were watching that game last night. And Matthew says, Rudy Gobert behaving like a petulant child cost the Wolves that Raptors game last night. The Wolves should have outclassed that team, but when that didn't happen, Rudy should have been a professional and did what it took to win the game. He decided to take a 3-second call, appearing to try and prove a point, and followed it up immediately with a pouty hip check on the other end. If I were Chris Finch, I would play Rudy Gobert. I would play Rudy Gobert the 3 possessions that followed, that where he failed to secure an easy dump-off pass on repeat until he got the message. Play him the video of it. Dude needs to grow up or substantially improve his hands. Only one of these things is possible at this point in his career. So, yeah, go ahead. You guys,
the hands thing won't change. I mean, it is truly remarkable. A man with those size mitts cannot catch a basketball. I do find that amazing, but I've given up on that long ago. Give up on that very early in the Rudy experience here in Minnesota. But the growing up part, yeah, Gobert gets absolutely filleted by so many players for a lot of reasons. A lot of people think he's overpaid and overrated, and I think antics like last night, man, that really set back, I think, the Rudy Gobert discourse in the wrong direction. That's not where I would like it to be. I thought last year Rudy was awesome, and he finally figured out the piece where it fits, and he obviously has accolades being a defensive player of the year numerous times. But those vibes last night from Rudy and just the team overall, man, were reminiscent of 2 years ago in the first stint with Rudy. It really felt like we were watching a game from 2 years ago.
Yeah, Julius was sort of D'Lo-like, though, in his refusal to pass the ball to Gobert, who then pouted and certainly did look like he took an intentional 3-second call. I guess in the aftermath of that, with some time to think about it, one thing that really intrigues me is, so Gobert takes a 3-second call that is clearly him just, he's either loafing or he's pissed off, and so he's going to make a point. Ant, rightfully so, gets in his face and is like, what the F are you doing? And yells at him. But what's really intriguing about this is Chris Finch didn't do a thing about it.
Yeah.
So I guess where I land the morning after is Finch trying to let them work through it? Does Finch not think that that he should play a role? I mean, that was a really big sequence. And then if you recall, so Gobert is, in isolation, gets himself open. Julius Randle doesn't pass him the ball. and then he was being guarded by Barnes, right?
Yeah. Who's 6'7". And
yeah. So Barnes, if you go back and watch it, starts to celebrate, like outwardly, like celebrate. Gobert gets mad, and then to the point of the note that you just read, Phil, Gobert goes down the court and hip checks him. And all of this is just sort of left to the players' devices. I guess that surprises me a bit because, my God, if you didn't see a problem there, which I'm sure Chris Finch did, just find it interesting that he didn't really address it at all and allowed it to play out. And unfortunately for Chris Finch, if he was hoping it would get better from there, it didn't.
There are so many, by the way, these clips, and there's like 3 or 4 different sequences and clips that all kind of glue together in the second half of that fourth quarter. And they're all being circulated, not by Wolves Twitter, NBA Twitter and social media has picked up all this stuff now too. And I put out a couple things last night, and like Knicks fans are jumping in saying, ha, on the Julius front. Yeah, that's what you get. This is who he is. He can be super cantankerous. And so you've got different, this isn't just like pile on Rudy. So I'm going to kind of dissect this and you guys tell me what you think. Because there's a few different points where it's like, is that Rudy that should be chastised or is it Julius? So the play in question where Rudy seals off Scotty Barnes, Julius Randle is handling the ball kind of not top of the key, but like more like the wing area, right? And they are initiating a play of some kind from what I can tell. Now unfortunately, there were no local like Timberwolves beat writers at that game last night, so we didn't get like the full fleshing out post game back and forth with Chris Finch and some of the players that we normally would get. It's Toronto. There was a Taylor Swift concert which had hotel prices through the roof and stuff. So we didn't get like all the information overnight that we normally would. But to me, it looked like Julius Randle was about to initiate a half court set of some kind, like they had something drawn up. And Rudy, again, maybe I'm wrong on this, but Rudy saw, wait a second, I've got a 6'7" dude who I can pin under the hoop right now. I'm going to do that and just like throw it into me and we'll get an easy bucket or an and one or a foul or something. And Julius waved him off. I mean, Rudy had him, because you could argue in that spot, whatever was called, you literally have a 7'2" monster sealing off a 6'7" player under the basket. I know he has bad hands, but throw him the ball and just get an easy bucket there. And Julius waves off Rudy as it, like dismissively too, because they showed sort of the front view with the other camera angle. Yeah. He's like, dude, we're trying to run something here. Get the hell out of the way, was kind of the motion that he gave. And Rudy shrugs his shoulders and stays in the lane and pouts, gets the 3-second. Ant goes after Rudy.
Yeah.
So my sense was like Rudy went rogue within the action, but also like Rudy saw, hey, I got a dude sealed off right here. And then layered on top of that, as played out the next 5 minutes, is Julius Randle, like D'Lo 2 years ago, does not trust Rudy to catch a pass in any circumstance.
Right.
So Julius, like 2 or 3 other times throughout the rest of the game, tried to throw passes to Rudy, and he fumbled them 2 or 3 times. And then we get to the end of game sequence, which was also fascinating, where they're down by 5 with 7 seconds to go. The game is over. And Julius is dribbling up the court to just maybe get a basket. But if you're going to shoot a 3, if you're going to try and get back in the game, and he sees Rudy wide open under the basket with his hands up. And again, I think to prove a point, he rifles the pass to Rudy kind of below his waist. And predictably, it bounces off Rudy's hands. And then Julius Randle kind of turns away and walks off the court. It felt like Julius was trying to prove a point a couple different times, which is bad. It feels like there's no chemistry between those two guys, which is bad. And then Ant claps Rudy. I think they can work through some of this stuff, but major red flags. Major red flags for just kind of the chemistry and the trust between some of these key starters.
I'm not as concerned about Ant clapping Gobert because I think what frustrated him the most was Gobert clearly just loafed his way into a 3-second call. Because, like, if you go back and watch that, he literally just starts to sort of walk out of the paint. Yeah. And it's like, dude, you're big, but you got to get your steps outside there, and he didn't. Yeah. And I think that was the what the F in the moment. I think the bigger concern is Randle and Gobert. And now part of this is also based on the fact that Conley was not playing. Because if you have a point guard there, perhaps that's Conley's ball at that point in time, and he would have almost certainly called an audible, right? And got it to Gobert because he's played with him a ton. He knows, and he also knows what type of passes he can catch and can't catch. So that probably takes away the problem. But they have to figure it out. And my question is, how are you going to do that? And I guess my follow-up is, at what point in time does the coach sort of have to, and I'm not saying be a complete jerk and go off, but at what point in time does the coach have to step in as well? You know, like this, it feels like Finch is intent on, the team is going to work things out. And to a certain point, I think that's fine. If Ant wants to get mad, that's fine. But like this was this became a point of contention between two players, in this case, Gobert and Randle, for the rest of the game.
And those two players, and maybe this is all transitionary because Julius Randle could be a free agent at the end of the year anyways. And the second feedback question here is in regards to the trade that was made. But if for the rest of this season anyways, those guys have to coexist. Cat and Gobert had to coexist. And by the way, by the end of that thing, Cat and Gobert had great chemistry. They went from being unplayable together statistically in the first season to really figuring it out, being a great compliment to each other. Cat was looking to throw lobs to Rudy, and they just they built a great chemistry. But it did take a while for that thing to form. But this is where I will praise Cat. There was a willingness. Mike Conley comes in and kind of makes it cool to embrace Rudy halfway through that first season. And Cat, over the next year or so, did a great job of just buying in and looking for ways to. Now, when you're going to dump it into Rudy, the higher the better. If you can put it up by the cylinder, he can grab it up top and throw it down. And it felt like Julius Randle is just trying to throw ropes at his knees. It's like, well, he's not gonna catch those those bounce passes in the lane in traffic. If you can get it up for a lob, he's gonna catch it if it's above his head more often than not. But those guys, if Julius Randle, much like D'Lo was more likely to make fun of and clown Rudy in front of reporters in the locker room than he was to actually buy in and try and make it work. So they shipped his ass out. And if Julius Randle isn't willing to, hey, listen, he doesn't have great hands, but for this thing to work, you have to buy in. He's going to play 30-plus minutes a night. And Julius, you're going to play 30-plus minutes a night. You can't keep each other. It's not like you can say, oh, just keep them separate. They have to gel together for this thing to work. So the good news is, and Kyle and I were texting last night too, if you're going to have a weird spat like this, get it out of the way in November and December so they can work through some of this stuff and maybe it starts to glue together. But you play Boston on Sunday. So
I just don't like what I saw. I just don't like, I don't think the Ant thing does not bother me a bit. It's his team. He leads, right? If he wants to get mad at guys, you go for it. And with him, personality wise, I guarantee you it's done. So he gets mad, he yells, it's done. I really didn't like what I saw though, from a standpoint of trying to clearly to use what you're saying, Phil, to make a point, right? Now you're throwing him passes and
both guys tried to make points.
Yeah.
Rudy was trying to make a point to Julius, and Julius was trying to make a point later on to Rudy. It's like, you guys. Yeah,
but Gobert has God gave him two mallets. We know he's got two mallets. They're called hands, but they're mallets. Yeah. And if the pass is high, it's not like you can't, if you're going to have to pass him the ball, it's not like you can't sit down and watch reams of film of Conley, right? And those passes. And it's like, okay, that works. That does not work. So I just thought it was a really weird, I don't ever remember 2 years ago beyond D'Lo and Gobert. I don't remember Cat ever trying to make a purposeful point. It just didn't work out great, but then it did.
It takes a while to get used to playing with Rudy Gobert. And there can be hiccups and uncomfortable moments. But if you're all in it for the long haul, Cat didn't know he was going to get traded. So last year he was in it for the long haul. All right, I got to make this work. Let's make it work. Julius Randle, I don't know where his head's at. Does he think he's in this for the long haul with the Timberwolves, or is he thinking, hell, I got a player option after the year's over?
That's a great point.
I ain't gonna deal with this crap. Get out of my way, man. Why are you standing in the paint right now? That's what that felt like. Justin R chimes in here and says, so he has a take on the Cat Julius Randle DiVincenzo trade that we should get into. Cat has outperformed Julius Randle big time this year. He has better analytics, VORP, OBPM, DBPM. You base your analysis, Mackey, of players too much on emotion. Also, either Randle or Nas will be gone after the season. Both will want starter money, and we can only pay one to start. Most likely, Randle is the odd man out. So I just want to... Cat has outperformed Julius Randle big time this year. Correct. I don't know that the expectation was anything other. I don't know that anyone in the evaluation of this trade was saying that in a vacuum, Julius Randle is a better player than Cat. Now, Julius Randle does some things better than Cat, and at his best, like, absolutely, those guys can be comparable. But the spirit of this trade was never a one-for-one deal, Randle for Cat. It was you're trading Cat for two good players, and also you're getting some relief from Cat's crazy. Cat has one of the most expensive contracts in the league. 4 years left, up to $60 million when he's 32 years old in a salary cap league in which you are in the second luxury tax apron right now. Often injured, 29. And so they were looking for some long-term relief as he ages, looking to sell high on him. And in return, get a couple good players, more flexibility, and see what happens in 2024-25. But they had to make a hard decision. Do we pay a 29-year-old, often injured guy $50 to $60 million in a salary cap league who disappears in about half of the big games he plays in, shot 27% in the first three games of the Western Conference Finals as your 1B to Anthony Edwards, games you lost, by the way, by 3, 1, and 9 points. They decided we have to sell high on him. For a bunch of different reasons. We have to sell high. Bring in these two dudes and do it right before the season starts and see what happens. And we're still in the see what happens, figure it out mode. I'm not ready to make a full judgment on it. But it only works if Julius Randle buys into playing with Rudy Gobert. That's the only way it works this year.
Short term, it looks like a bad trade. Right now, it looks like a bad trade. But there's two ways to look at this trade. One is the short term. Like right now, oh my God. Like the team's bickering. They're 8-7 now. They play Boston next. But here's the thing about the long term, including, let's just say, into January. I think DiVincenzo is going to be, I'll stick by this fine. I think he's off to a bad start. He got traded late. He looks like he's not comfortable yet. His three-pointer's not falling by any means consistently, but I think he's going to be fine. Julius Randle is what we just talked about, which is a look-see. I agree with Royce's contention that I think they were shopping Cat and found it was very hard to dump a contract that big. All of those things have to be weighed if you are the GM. All of those things. You can't just be like, I guarantee you, and I know fans probably hate this, but I guarantee you that no GM in sports sits down and thinks, okay, what if this is a bad short-term trade? Yeah. What if in November it's not going well? What's going to happen to me? That's not how you think. So yeah, from a financial standpoint, now, did they take a chance probably on what I would say is turning into Julius Randle's mercurial nature? Yes, they did. But again, it's a short-term contract. And quite frankly, you know what? I mean, Phil, you bring up a really interesting point, which is probably not going to be dissected enough, but it should be. Whenever a guy has an option coming up or the contract is coming to an end, especially in certain leagues with guys that consider themselves to be borderline star players, football and basketball, that can become a thing. I mean, Jimmy Butler, that was a huge thing with Jimmy Butler,
yeah,
right?
I don't want to deal with this.
Right.
Yep.
So if Julius Randle's like, okay, hold on a second here. I got to get paid again. And you're making me play with this big oaf who I personally don't want to play with in the paint, which is, by the way, in his mind, my territory.
Paint. Yeah.
Right. So this is something that I used to probably mistakenly dismiss too much, but it can cause guys, if Julius Randle sees Rudy Gobert as impeding his value, he ain't going to make it work.
Yeah, because in that moment, when Rudy Gobert is sealing off a 6'7" defender, I think almost everybody else on the Wolves roster last year and this year throws that pass to him.
Oh, yeah.
Except for Julius Randle, who's thinking in that moment, the way he dismissed it, you're in my way.
Correct.
Move. This
You were
isn't what we call.
You're in the way of my money. No, I think
yeah.
you're right. And look,
So-
the one thing the Cat had when he was willing to make it work with Gobert was security.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're both we're both in this for the next however many years. We have no other choice but to make it work. So Jacob Luberda says, following up on your Flagrant Howls Hottest Takes episode from this week and the discussion centered around Rob Dillingham getting minutes, I agree with you guys that I want to see him get some more run in the rotation. And he did last night because Conley was out. I think he's going to be a very fun player. I think he can be a souped-up version of what Jordan McLaughlin was the past few years, inject energy, play fast, move the ball. I think the Wolves also need him to be as ready as possible to play meaningful games later this season and playoffs, because what if 37-year-old Conley sustains another significant injury that keeps him sidelined? The Wolves have nobody else on the roster who's a true point guard and nobody that has nearly the handle that Dillingham does to combat heightened defensive pressure. So last night, he played 10 minutes. And I'll tell you, like, eye test, this is like the second time this season where he's been out there for a chunk, and I've said, he looks, he's definitely undersized, and you have to hide him on defense a little bit, but, like, man, like, he can pass. He's got a nice little offensive bag that he's still trying to figure out, but he definitely looks like he deserves 10 minutes and maybe more at some point. But then you look at the 10 minutes, and the Wolves were a minus 14 in the 10 minutes that he played in a game in which they lost by 5. So if my math is right here, maybe Declan's St. Cloud State math can back me up. The Wolves were a minus 14 in the minutes that Rob Dillingham was out there, 10. In the other 38 minutes, the Wolves were a plus 9, right? So, you still got to run him out there. And this is where I think you have to make this trade-off. And some of it is when he throws a pass and someone misses a wide open catch and shoot. All right, well, that's not his fault.
Yes.
But I think you have to take lumps and risk losing a game at Toronto and maybe losing 5 extra games to see if he can get ready as quickly as possible to be that dude behind Mike Conley in the second half of the season. I'm willing to take this trade-off right now.
Yeah, unless you're going to go out and get another point guard to replace him, because, it's very, very clear. Now Conley's got what? His grand big toe or something is messed up. And by the way, foot problems in basketball or in all sports ain't good.
Yeah.
So, yes, you either have to be willing to take your lumps to develop this kid who you drafted pretty high and made a trade for, or you got to go get a replacement because, the counting on Mike Conley to repeat the magical 2023-24 season looks like it's out the window. So, yeah, I think you're gonna have to accept his flaws. But that's the thing is Finch going to? Like, it doesn't appear he has any interest in that if guys can play. But the problem with that is the more that you play Mike Conley, it appears the more that you're going to drive him into the ground, which you really don't want to do in November. Like, this is the question. What do you do here as far as, like, your bench? We've talked about this quite a bit. What do you do as far as development of guys go? Do you try and just run this crew that you've got as much as you possibly can and hope that it all works out? Like, there's a lot of very interesting questions that I think face Conley and Finch right now. And I don't know if we're seeing what I would deem to be answers that you should love.
A big positive last night, though, was Jaden McDaniels. This is the type of game I think is possible all the time from him. He played 42 minutes in that game. He scores 22 points, grabs 7 rebounds. It should not be a rare occurrence that he grabs 7 rebounds. It should not. Yeah. It is a unicorn when he grabs 7 rebounds, but that should be it. 22 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, a couple of steals. He knocks down a couple big threes. He's 8 of 15 from the floor. That should be 4 out of every 5 games for him. I'd love to see Jaden McDaniels, if he rises up and gives you 17 to 22 points on a regular basis, which he is capable of, and helps fill the rebounding gap, which you've needed.
But where is that?
Well, it was certainly there last night, and it's
right.
been there a couple other times.
But I feel like we've been talking in these terms for a couple of years now, because when he is there and applies himself, he makes, I mean, just as far as being a glue guy, a huge difference. But then, come Sunday in Boston or something, he'll disappear again.
Yep. So, Sunday in Boston, you're 0 for 1 in your quest to snap 20-year losing streaks in these cities here. The two longest road losing streaks in the league right now are Wolves at Toronto and Wolves at Boston. So, come on, Wolfies. Go sneak one out against the Celtics here. By the way, Dex, the Fillmore.
Yeah.
Great spot for us. Purple Daily Draft Party a few months ago, but they have some great shows coming up near Target Center, too.
Yeah, scorenorth.com/tickets. Check out all those great shows. I got a plentiful amount of artists showing up. We were out there at the draft for our draft party, which was an absolute blast. Scorenorth.com/tickets, just steps away from Target Center. If you're coming in for a Wolves game and you're going to be here for the weekend or be here for an extended period of time, go check out our show at the Fillmore. Scorenorth.com/tickets to learn more.
Yeah. All right, dudes, that's a wrap on this Feedback Friday edition of Flagrant Howls. Just breaking down all these weird moments between.
Get your act together.
There's always next year to finally beat that vaunted Raptors team in Toronto for the first time in 20 years. And we'll see what happens, Wolves and Celtics on Sunday, and we'll hit you with our State of the Wolves Monday episode of Flagrant Howls, your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.